All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be giving you guys my deep dive, my game-by-game breakdown in which player prop bets are going to be my favorite prop bets, as well as some game lines that are going to be popping up as good bets as well. This will be covering Underdog and PrizePicks, but also touching on Fliff, DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. Going to be touching on it all here for you guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, just real quickly, a recap from the Thursday night action. Actually, a very awesome slate there. Personally, I was able to take down another GPP in DFS, but we were able to go 5 for 5 on our PrizePicks bet of the day as well. The Underdog bet of the day goes 2 for 3. We had a middling opportunity there with Rico with his rush and receiving yards, where it was off by 3. Barely just missed on hitting the middle on Underdog as well. And then the 2 traditional sportsbook bets that I gave out as well ended up hitting. So very good day on Thursday. That's actually the second time this year where we basically hadn't had a miss on a slate, which was pretty awesome. So hopefully we can do that again in this video. So again, I will be doing the game-by-game breakdown here, and we're going to start off with the Saints versus the Falcons. Definitely an interesting game. Falcons are looking better as a team. The Saints seem like they need Taysom Hill to make the offense work, which sounds strange, but it seems to be true. So we'll touch on all that. So to me, one of the first things that is going to be worth calling out is that this game is projected to be kind of a low scoring game at 41.2 on average is the line. The Falcons are actually going to be favored to win by 3 points, which I do find interesting. Now, I think a lot of that comes down to really just the Falcons being healthy heading into this game. And the Saints have been a little bit banged up as well. Alvin Kamara, questionable, limited in practice. He's expected to play. Chris Olave, hamstring injury. That's never a good thing. You know, typically hamstring injuries are like a 3 to 4 week injury. It seems like that might have just been a small thing with him, but if he were to sit, obviously that creates some concern there for that Saints offense there as well. So I kind of get the line of the Falcons being 3-point favorites, and obviously the Saints, no one really expected them to be that offensive powerhouse that they were the first 2 weeks. And again, I think that might be rooted in a little bit of Taysom Hill. But I think it's worth calling out that Taysom Hill is going to be back active in this game as well. And honestly, if like Alvin Kamara is a little bit limited in this game, I kind of expect Taysom Hill to get a decent amount of work in this game. Like, it's gone a little bit unnoticed. He has kind of been their running back number 2 in this offense as well. So just an interesting tidbit there, I would say. And so we jump into the PrizePicks cheat sheet here. What we're going to notice is that we are getting some okay prop bets here, but at the same time, prop bets that I feel like we don't exactly need to go out and make. I will say, though, on Underdog, this is on the PrizePicks cheat sheet, but it does highlight the difference between the PrizePicks and Underdog line. I wouldn't mind the idea of running these unders out for Drake London fantasy score, for Kyle Pitts fantasy score. You know, 2 of probably the most overrated players in the league. I hate to say, I think we're seeing that Arthur Smith was indeed not the problem there. Maybe it was more Kyle Pitts is vastly overvalued, and maybe Drake London just isn't the elite receiver that people try to make him out to be. So, like, I really don't mind these unders here on Underdog for these 2 specifically. And if you guys look at it, like Drake London, I mentioned this after week 1 in passing, that it seemed like Darnell Mooney was actually the receiver number 1 in this offense. And it does seem to be that has kind of become the case. Or at the very least, there isn't a receiver number 1 in this offense. So definitely an interesting tidbit there, I would say. And another thing that I think is worth pointing out is the amount of snaps that Ray McCloud is getting as well. And he's been getting a decent amount of targets as well there. So I think we actually could be getting some sneaky prop bets for Darnell Mooney and Ray McCloud, specifically more so like in a traditional sports book rather than like Underdog or PrizePicks. And so looking at the Drake London line for his under fantasy score, we can see that's going to be one of the best bets for this game in general. What I don't like is Darnell Mooney's also popping up there as well for the under fantasy score. I mentioned we'll look for some traditional sports books bets with him and Ray McCloud. From there, there's really not that much that I feel like we need to go in on. The rest of them are pretty much on par with how I kind of see it going as well. Obviously, Bijan Robinson is going to be more game script dependent for his like rush attempts prop. So if they're playing with the lead, he'll probably get the over. If not, he might not. So like, no need to bother with that. And just for what it's worth, guys, we are currently, as I'm recording this video, we are currently getting 3 really good bets where we are gaining an edge on these sports books. So FanDuel, you'd want to bet Justin Fields to get under 0.5 INTs. We can see the average Vegas line has it set about a 56% likelihood, whereas FanDuel has it set at about 54.5. Jamar Chase for under 6.5 receptions. Again, same thing. The average Vegas line is slightly overvaluing this compared to BetMGM. And then Zach Moss over receiving yards. So 3 pretty decent bets there. And the nice thing about all of them is the projection data is also liking the over there as well. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into some of these Atlanta Falcons props. And the first thing that I think we should point out is we are getting a decent edge when we look at it in terms of the projected lines. And so let's just sort by that projected edge. So this is where the projection data is telling us something, a little bit different than what kind of Vegas is seeing. And if you agree with it, it's a good spot to attack. I would say that's why we were able to be successful on Thursday night. So right off the bat, I don't mind this Darnell Mooney for over his receiving yards. Okay, so the average line would have this at about 38.5. So we can see the lines at 37.5 are a little bit too low. Now, the thing that's we don't love is that both of these are going to be minus 115 to hit. Like, not terrible, not great. We'll take that though. And then Ray McLeod, potentially his over receiving yards on FanDuel. Not an elite bet. Let's see, what is he averaging thus far this season? 12.3 yards per game. So don't love that. Are we getting... That's not right. Sorry, 37 point. That makes more sense. 37 yards per game. I think I like that. I think that'd be the one I would want to go with. But either way, both of those bets are going to be seemingly decent bets. Any receptions props, Darnell Mooney 3.5. Let's actually take a peek at this because, again, I find this like crazy, the amount of disrespect he has been getting. And I just want to see, are we getting any big edges here? We are in some cases, like that's Ray McLeod. One sec. Let's just sort by Mooney. So are there any that like the over is heavily under? And not really, like minus 1.5 for ESPN Bet's really the best one that we have. That's more how I see it, but those receiving yards props are probably the better edge there. And so we'll go ahead and jump on into the next game now. We got the Bengals versus the Panthers, which instantly I kind of think Zach Moss is going to be someone I want to be targeting, just given the matchup with the Panthers. But we'll touch on that and see if the data is going to like the overs for him as well. Now, this is projected to be one of the higher scoring games on the slate as well. At 47 points, the Bengals are only 4.5 point favorites. If this would have came out last week, if this game was week 3, I wonder what the line would be, because obviously the Bengals 0-3, don't love that. And the Panthers coming in off of a pretty dominant win. So we kind of get why that is. Looking at the injury report for the Bengals, I do want to point out Tanner Hudson. If he is out, I think we're going to see Eric All and Mike Gesicki actually be involved a decent amount like we saw on Monday night last week. If he is active, I kind of think that goes back to the normal tight end split that we saw in week 1. And so taking a peek at those snaps, Tanner Hudson had about 18% in week 1. I would see that would continue again. Drew Sample only 40%, Mike Gesicki 50%, Eric All 34%. So they definitely are mixing it up in terms of the tight end snaps. I don't think we want to be touching those. But again, if Tanner Hudson's active, that could just muddy the situation even more. Hudson's probably their best pass catching tight end, even though he had a fumble at the goal line in week 1. So I think that's part of it. And then we look at the Carolina Panthers, guys. Unfortunately for them, a little bit banged up, especially at the receiver position. So Adam Thielen on the IR. He's going to be out, obviously, until week 8. Deontay Johnson is dealing with a groin injury as well. He should be good to go, but, don't love seeing that as well. And this is another team where I do think it's worthwhile to look at the snaps. So we look at the tight end snaps. Tommy Tremble came back and instantly played 86% of the snaps. He was out in week 1, played 46 in week 2, and then he was instantly back to a tight end 1 snap share. And if that continues again, guys, we're probably going to get some good value on him. Looking at the running back position, kind of the running back split that we would expect. I don't think anyone's saying Chuba Hubbard's a workhorse running back in terms of snaps by any means. I think we're going to expect that to continue. So with that, I probably don't like either of them, like either Miles Sanders or Chuba Hubbard. And then looking at Deontay Johnson, obviously a little bit limited in terms of snaps last week with that game being a blowout. But who's going to step up and play more snaps in the absence of Adam Thielen? Well, it's probably going to be Leggett, obviously a decent amount now. But Jonathan Mingo was the player that stepped up the most in absence of Adam Thielen. He was already someone that was playing a decent amount of snaps as well. And then Deontay Johnson is still going to be the top receiver there. We know that. And so we go ahead and look at the PrizePicks props that we're getting here. What we're going to notice is that at least the biggest edge probably seems to be Xavier Leggett for under his fantasy score on Underdog. So obviously we'll touch on that in just a second. From that point on, there's really not that many big edges. You could argue Andy Dalton is off by a decent amount on PrizePicks as well, compared to both how Underdog sees this, and also compared to how Vegas sees this going as well. So I don't mind the over bet for Andy Dalton. I will be using that in a couple of stacks here and there. One bet that I don't mind the over for, more of a traditional sportsbook bet, would be Deontay Johnson as well. And we'll get into that in just a second here. So really, to me, if you're looking for a PrizePicks bet really for this game, it would be just Andy Dalton for over his fantasy score. Again, that's off by 3, but not a crazy big edge there regardless. That's really the difference probably between scoring a touchdown or not. And so then we jump into Underdog, and we will see the Leggett under fantasy score is definitely the best prop bet that we are getting. 54.9% edge there or likelihood to hit. We can see why. The average sportsbook line would have this set at 7.2, and they would be heavily favoring the under there at about 55% likelihood to hit. So very good edge there for us. Andy Dalton over first quarter passing yards, that's okay. And then that's really it. So let's go ahead and jump on into a couple sportsbook bets here. And really just looking at Deontay Johnson. So I mentioned I think I'll like him for over his receptions. I do think Andy Dalton kind of unlocks a different part of this offense. The one worry that I would have is that Adam Thielen's not going to be there. You kind of add in more defensive attention than for Deontay Johnson. But I think we saw the production that really the head coach was predicting would be there for him really all offseason. And so that is something I think I want to be targeting in some capacity, and especially if we can get a good bet like we are getting on BetMGM per se. Plus 105 to get over 5.5 receptions. Obviously, I'm going against what the projection data likes and what the average sportsbook line is suggesting as well. I'm more or less saying I think he's going to get targeted heavily. I want to bet that over. I think that'd be a route that I'd be going here as well. From there, I did want to see if we got any Tommy Tremble lines. And we are getting some lines for him. Let's see. Receiving yards, 19.5. We can see on ESPN Bet. That's not bad. So minus 120 there on ESPN Bet. I don't mind this one. And we see the average line is about 21.3, about a 50-50 split there. So at 19.5, we are getting a decent edge there. That's probably it. I don't feel like I need to go in on 2.5 receptions or not. And again, the reason why I like this one is going to be more chasing those snaps. He played 86% of the snaps last week. I think that's something we're going to expect to continue again. And then also you take out a pass catcher like Adam Thielen, although I think that could potentially hurt Deontay Johnson with more defensive attention to him. They're not going to put more defensive attention to Tommy Tremble. And so it just takes him being involved in the offense. And he's one of the more established players in the offense as well. I'm not saying that's like a good thing in terms of talent, but he knows the offense. He's been there a while. Has averaged over this as well. So, we like that. Now we'll go ahead and jump on into the Bengals here. I don't think I want to be targeting this Mike Gesicki one. Again, with the potential that we could be seeing Tanner Hudson back, I think that actually could end up hurting Mike Gesicki. He's looked good. All the Titans have been used properly, I would say. So not exactly one that you need to go out of your way to target. I will say I hate this line for Zach Moss. I was hoping we'd be able to get a betting opportunity on Zach Moss for his over fantasy score, just because, again, I like this matchup. I like the snaps he's playing about 59 to 60% of the snaps. I think that's something we can expect to continue. But because of that, we're really not getting any big edges here for the Bengals on PrizePicks. We'll jump into Underdog. Now for Underdog, we are seeing a couple lines, a little bit higher. The Zach Moss fantasy score line is a little bit high. Jamar Chase line is a little bit high as well in comparison, especially to the PrizePicks line and to what Vegas is thinking. Jamar Chase under fantasy score is one that does make sense. That's a good bet that we have on paper. At the same time, I could really see this being a game where the Bengals just go out and get it. They're 0-3. They need to go out and win. I don't know if I necessarily want to be targeting too many prop bets from this team, but we are seeing a lot of the unders be favored. Do want to point out Evan McPherson over 7.5 kicking points. That has already been bumped up on PrizePicks, And so because of that, I would imagine that this will eventually get bumped up on Underdog as well. So if this is still available by the time you guys are watching this, by all means, go ahead and use that one. So now we jump into an interesting game here. We got the LA Rams versus the Chicago Bears. We know that the Rams are still banged up. Puka Nacua is going to be out. Cooper Kupp's going to be out as well. Tyler Higbee's still out. For Chicago, Travis Homer is injured, and we actually saw Roschon Johnson get a decent amount of work. What we need an update on is Keenan Allen. Is he going to play or not? Looking at this game, it is a game that the Bears are somehow favored to win. I'm a little bit surprised by that. They haven't been playing all too well. 40.5 is the game total as well. That seems actually kind of low to me. I know both teams are banged up, but Sean McVay has been, been pretty good. And Caleb Williams, you eventually would think he would figure it out as well. Now, I do think something that's noteworthy is the amount of snaps that the LA Rams receivers played last week. I was thinking it'd be Jordan Whittington getting a big bump in his snaps, and no, that did not end up happening. Tutu Atwell actually slid in to get around 74% of the snaps, which was actually something that I predicted at the start of the offseason until Jordan Whittington really broke out in camp. A little bit annoying. I don't know really what to expect because of this. DeMarcus Robinson's kind of the clear player that's going to get a lot of playing time, but his role hasn't changed at all. It's been Tutu Atwell. And the reason why I like Tutu Atwell is like a handcuff to Cooper Kupp is because that's what he was last year. And so we did see them resort back to kind of what they did last year. And then they just split the work between Tyler Johnson and Jordan Whittington. Don't exactly love that. Again, I kind of still think Jordan Whittington will be the guy, but maybe he just doesn't know the playbook as much as Sean McVay would want. Colby Parkinson, has been playing a bunch. Really not that much that he's doing with that. And then Kyron Williams as well, just playing a bunch of snaps as well, what we would expect. And Ronnie Rivers is still the backup running back for anyone that was wondering. Now, I do want to take a peek at the Chicago Bears as well. I mentioned that with Travis Homer getting injured, Roschon Johnson got some work, and I might need to get him added in here. He's not popping up here, but DeAndre Swift really not playing that many snaps. Definitely a concern there. I don't think we want to be betting on DeAndre Swift at all. Cole Kmet, definitely interesting, the amount of snaps that he played. Jared Everett got a bunch of work in week 1. We'll see if this trend continues. If it does, which it does seem like it might, Cole Kmet could be someone that we're looking at in this game as well. If any of his over bets are popping up, I might be looking at it. And then looking at guys, Roma Dunze and DJ Moore, especially if Keenan Allen's out, they're both not going to leave the field. They're both going to be on the field a bunch. And DeAndre Carter has firmly been the receiver number 3 in that offense when Keenan Allen has been out. And so here's certainly an interesting EV bet opportunity that we have here. Caleb Williams for under his rush attempts. Again, this is probably going to be one that will not be there by the time most of you guys get in here to place your bets. But if it is, by all means, let's go ahead and use this one. If not, we have another decent bet here, which would be Caleb Williams for over his fantasy score. Again, kind of like Andy Dalton, we could be using this one just simply given the fact that the line's off by a decent amount compared to how Vegas is seeing this game going. Vegas would give him about a 50% chance of getting 18 for a fantasy score. And so the 16 that we're getting on PrizePicks does seem to be like a decent edge. So if you guys want to just go ahead and use like two bets together where we're just taking advantage of the clear outliers in terms of how Vegas seems it going, Andy Dalton over his fantasy score on PrizePicks, Caleb Williams over his fantasy score on PrizePicks as well. Another bet that I really, really like is going to be Keenan Allen for over 3.5 receptions. I don't really get this one. Keenan Allen, if he's active, should be able to get this over. He really crushed it in week 1, got a bunch of targets. He was the kind of the favorite target for Caleb Williams, and it's only going to help Caleb Williams as well. I don't see how he wouldn't get there, honestly. For lack of a better way of phrasing it. And for what it's worth, guys, Keenan Allen receiving yards as well on PrizePicks. That's going to be one of the lowest lines that we have there as well. Personally, I like the receptions better, but I did want to call that out as well. Cole Kmet for over his fantasy score is not a bad one there as well. If that trend continues where he's getting a lot of work in the passing game, I could see using this. And this could be a sneaky stack here. I'm not sure if the payout would adjust that much, but I don't hate the idea of pairing these 3 together as a game stack there. And then we look at it, Underdog's line for Roschon Johnson is certainly interesting. The 7.75 line is very high. Now, I get it. He was heavily involved. The Bears just don't seem to know really what they want to do at the running back position. Obviously, Johnson's more of a bruiser type back. I know he got a lot of hype out of camp last year. I don't know. There's just not that much there. He's kind of just another guy, like a Deontay Foreman type. I don't know why they didn't just keep him, honestly. I guess Johnson's younger, probably. But I don't hate this bet. Like, he would have to score a touchdown, I think, for this one to hit. Which he could. I mean, that's plausible, but I don't want to be targeting that. But really, no good bets here on Underdog. So let's stick with the Rams there, and really just nothing here. No need to really waste time here. I wouldn't want to bet these unders. They're not even at 54%, so don't even really need to touch on that. So again, we'll jump into PrizePicks. And nothing too crazy. Again, we are seeing a slight prop line difference in Matthew Stafford's fantasy score as well. So another, maybe you do Caleb Williams, Matthew Stafford, Andy Dalton over their fantasy scores because they're off by a decent amount compared to how PrizePicks and Underdog see it going. So then we jump into the Packers versus Vikings, which is probably one of the more appealing games to watch this week in terms of kind of a surprising team in the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold. I kind of thought Sam Darnold would play well, maybe not this well. He's been playing well. And then you got the Green Bay Packers, who won 2 straight with Malik Willis at their quarterback, or starting at the quarterback position for them. So now they're going to have Jordan Love, it seems like, to be back in this game. I would assume that's why they're 3-point favorites here as well. But because of that, because we don't have that confirmed just yet, we don't have a lot of Packers lines that we are getting. So with that, we'll just start with the Vikings lines that we're getting. And Justin Jefferson for under his rush receiving TDs is certainly a good one. Projected to get 0.43. A very good edge for this one to hit, or percent likelihood for this one to hit. He gets Jair Alexander on him, one of the better cornerbacks. They have a little bit of a rivalry going on for what it's worth. I don't know if that helps or hurts Justin Jefferson. We will see. And I will say, like, the Packers defense has been a little bit hit or miss. It almost wouldn't be shocking to see Jefferson make a big play at the same time still be somewhat shut down by this Packers defense. They've been kind of hit or miss. I will say, though, other than that Eagles game where it was on a terrible field, the defense has looked good. Both defenses have looked good. The Vikings defense has been stout, and the Packers defense has been big playmaking defense. So I don't mind this under. Aaron Jones for under his fantasy score is certainly an interesting one. If you guys are a Packers fan or even followed my channel, I kind of described why the Packers had let go of Aaron Jones. You would argue he kind of cost the Packers 2 Super Bowls throughout his playoff career. He just kind of a choke artist. When you need him in clutch, he chokes, and vice versa. That was kind of the beauty of Aaron Jones. It's like, all right, we have nothing going. All of a sudden, a big pop play from Aaron Jones, and we're good to go. Like, it is a weird balancing act there. If you guys don't get what I mean, watch the last play for the Packers in the playoffs. Aaron Jones has like 30 yards ahead of him if he doesn't fall down and then try to make a dump block. Like, he gets a dump off pass that he takes for 30 yards. Had a sloppy fumble against Tampa Bay, which Tampa Bay goes on to win the Super Bowl that year. That was painful. Packers were definitely the better team that year, so just kind of unfortunate there. That being said, he made this nice note. He's going to be motivated to play well. I don't know what type of Aaron Jones we're going to get. We might get a big game out of him, but I kind of expect him to have a situation for Vikings fans where they just go like, no, that could not have happened. Just kind of a fun tidbit there, I would say. I don't mind the under. I think obviously we'd rather bet on underdog. We'll stick with PrizePicks here, seeing it like what Green Bay Packers props we are getting. And we are getting some here. Okay, so I don't mind these. Romeo Doubs for over 3.5 receptions. If Jordan Love is indeed going to be the quarterback and not going to be limited at all, that seems like a good prop bet for us to bet on. I actually don't mind Christian Watson for over 2.5 receptions as well. He kind of unlocks the passing game if he's going to be healthy. And that's kind of a big caveat. We don't know how healthy he's going to be. We haven't really seen him in practice too much, how much he's going to be able to move around. That is part of his game. But I actually don't mind either of those. Christian Watson for over 2.5 receptions, projecting at 2.93. I like both of those. I like both of those a decent amount, actually. And then Romeo Doubs over 3.5 receptions. That's pretty good. Maybe we toss in a little bit of a game stack with Justin Jefferson for under his touchdowns. I don't mind that. I think that's a decent way to go about doing it. But don't be surprised if these lines move tomorrow and whatnot. And then we'll just sort it by the game here. Brandon Powell, 3.5 receiving yards. I need to take a peek at his snaps. 43% last week, which was down a little bit. And Jordan Addison is back, good to go. I don't know. That's an interesting line. I don't feel the need to take that one though. I could see Jordan Addison get out to a slow start in terms of his fantasy score. Not terrible there, but really just looking at the Christian Watson over 2.5 receptions as well as the Romeo Doubs over 2.5 receptions. I was just wondering, are there any sites where we're getting a pretty good edge on these over 3.5 receptions? ESPN bet for Romeo Doubs over 3.5 receptions, minus 115 there. Christian Watson as well, minus 120. So 2 pretty good edges that we are getting there, I would say personally. I think in comparison to how I see the game going, those should be pretty decent edges. And especially compared to some of the other lines as well. Those are the 2 clear outliers that we're seeing. So I really don't mind those. So let's jump into the next game. We got the Jaguars versus the Texans here. Just going through it, Tank Bigsby is going to be back healthy in this game. Good to go in this game. So it'll be interesting to see how many snaps he played, because in week 1 he played a lot. In week 3 he didn't play that many. But full week here for him. Another week removed from being injured as well. I could see him playing a little bit more in this game. They kind of need him to. Gabe Davis, questionable We'll see if he plays or not. Obviously, if he sits, one that helps Christian Kirk out a bunch, but we're probably just looking at Parker Washington to get a little bit more work in that game. And then also, for what it's worth, Evan Ingram's still out, so that means we're going to be looking at Brenton Strange a little bit. And this is projected to be one of the higher scoring games here. 44 and almost 45 is the game total. Texans are going to be 6-point favorites in this game for what it's worth as well. Already mentioned some of the injuries that we're looking at. For the Jaguars. For the Texans, Tank Dell is going to be out, which is obviously a big changer for them. I think that's going to lead to Diggs just getting heavily involved. For what it's worth, guys, Robert Woods, it was funny, during the preseason, watching the games back, I was like, who is this number 2? He keeps looking good. It was Robert Woods, obviously. I don't know, so I wouldn't be surprised in this. I would expect him to get more snaps here. At the same time, they like Xavier Hutchinson, maybe John Mechie. They use him instead. He's more of a replacement for Tank Dell. But I really just think that this is going to mean that Diggs gets a little bit more involved. And it actually could lead to Dalton Schultz actually getting a little bit more work as well. In terms of Joe Mixon, I think it's important. I think he's going to play, but we don't know that for sure just yet. And I think that would actually put a little bit more attention on the passing game then, which would only make me want to be on like a Diggs reception prop a little bit more. So we'll take a peek at that, see if we're getting anything there. But guys, for Jacksonville, if Gabe Davis is going to be out in this game, that is low-key huge because he's been playing about 95% of the snaps. I don't know. It's just having Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. on the field together, two of the exact same players that are, good players. I wouldn't say elite at all. And they're kind of trying to force production to them. Just let the plays come naturally. I don't know. It's just weird. Maybe that'll be a good thing for the offense if Gabe Davis sits. Christian Kirk, it was a good thing for, that's for sure. Had his best game. I think like 10 targets, 8 receptions, had a really good game in that game. Last week was kind of regression to the mean week for some of the players. Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, a little bit of Derrick Henry as well, where your expectations for the season through week 1 and week 2, you probably thought you got it wrong, and then week 3 happens and you're like, all right, that's what we were expecting. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit less of a roller coaster ride, a little bit more steady. But Kirk, I would say, probably is the one that benefits the most with Gabe Davis being out. But I just think they're going to realize what they've been doing wrong and get him the football a little bit more. Brenton Stranger did want to call it 70 snaps or 70% of the snaps last week, 68 the previous week. So he's going to be the tight end to go to, and he's been pretty good. Really one of the bright spots for this team thus far. And then, looking at Travis Etienne, I do expect Tank Bigsby to get about 30% of the carries again in this game instead of De'Aaron Hurst-Johnson. I just think that's going to go to Tank Bigsby instead. And then while we're here looking at the snaps, let's just take a peek. Dare Ogunbowale did end up playing 42% of the snaps. He is a much better pass catcher. Cam Akers is fine, but not great. So if Joe Mixon is out, I kind of expect to see that happen again. And then in terms of receiver snaps, let's just take a peek at it. Who can we expect to get snaps in week 3? Again, I think it'll be Robert Woods, but it might just be a mix of Hutchinson as well if Tank Dell is out. But again, we're probably just looking at Diggs to be the player we want to go on the most. And then I do just want to kind of reiterate with Dalton Schultz, 96% of the snaps last week. If that continues, he could be some of the benefits or with Tank Dell already out, and then if Joe Mixon sits. And so just sorting it by the game here, are we getting any good edges at all? Gabe Davis over fantasy scores. So if he plays, that could be a good one. I don't exactly love that, to be honest with you guys. An okay under bet for tackles and assists, or just assists here. I would rather bet Christian Kirk for over his receptions. Nothing really here on underdog in terms of edges. We'll take a peek at PrizePicks. And again, just more of the same in terms of us just not really getting that big of edges here on the two DFS sportsbook type sites. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the traditional sites, see if we're getting any edges there. All right, so we kind of are like Christian Kirk for over his receptions. Not exactly a plus bet like I thought it would be, but not terrible there. 4.5 receptions, BetMGM -110. That's not terrible. We could do that. And then Stephon Diggs for over his 5.5 receptions on FanDuel. Again, I think he'll just get a little bit more concentrated of targets. Some of those easy manufactured touches is kind of the way I like to phrase it. That went to Tank Dell. I think will now just go to Diggs a little bit more so. And again, especially if Joe Mixon is out in this game. That's probably it. Dalton Schultz, I don't mind as a plus bet, +102 on FanDuel to get over 3.5 receptions. Again, play a lot of snaps. Again, just to reiterate, if Tank Dell's out, Dalton Schultz would get a bump. We actually saw that last year when Nico Collins or Tank Dell were out. Dalton Schultz was a player that really stepped up a lot. And so maybe we just see that happen a little bit more. Obviously, he plays or runs a lot of routes on the inside and maybe just gets those over the middle routes that maybe Tank Dell, not exactly getting this year, but had gone last year. And so I could see that as well. Now we'll jump on into the next game. We got the Steelers versus the Colts. One of the bigger pieces of news is that Jaylen Warren is going to be out in this game. Now, I don't know if that's really going to change actually that much for Najee Harris. I think that's actually just going to mean Cordell Patterson's going to get some work in this game. One kind of annoying thing is that Calvin Austin had a really good game last week. And I say annoying because I'm like, all right, Romaine Wilson's back. He doesn't need to get up to game shape, but I think that kind of puts an L on my takes for Calvin Austin way earlier on in the offseason, where I liked him as a last round pick because I thought he'd be the receiver number 2. Luckily, he had that game. At least I got one start out of him. But we'll still see if that happens. He didn't play a lot of snaps. That's something to note. For the Colts, for what's worth, guys, they've been garbage, but they're healthy, so we'll see. There was some people thinking that Jonathan Taylor might have been injured at the end of the game last week as to why he didn't play in the closing stretch of the game. He was not, apparently. They actually elected to go with Sermon, who, I don't know, he's just a worse version of JT, so it was strange. Like, if you're going to put a passing down back in there, you go with Tyler Goodson, honestly. I don't know, that was weird. And I typically like to default to, like, GMs, coaches. They know what they're doing, especially more so than me, just someone that's randomly watching it. But I think most people in the NFL would agree that that was just a strange one. That seemed like a mistake. And they seem to favor that a little bit more. That is Sermon as like kind of a third down back. It's weird. Now, I don't think the game total is really going to shock anyone here. 40 points. The maybe spread might surprise you. Steelers 2-point favorites. I don't know. Both teams have been honestly underwhelming. I know the Steelers haven't lost, but Justin Fields I feel like he's getting more hype than he deserves for just not having a turnover pretty much, which is all he needs to do, I'm not knocking him for that. Looked good last week, don't get me wrong as well, but we know this is kind of fluky. We know they're not that good. They're kind of, what this team needs, honestly, is to lose to the Colts so that they can have Russell Wilson take over at quarterback for them. And probably Justin Fields to be the reason why they lose. If they want to take the next step to really be a threat, I would say, in the playoffs. They need better than average quarterback play, pretty much, to unlock this team being an actual true threat, because this defense is great. And again, I don't want to knock Justin Fields there, but is there really a difference between Daniel Jones and Justin Fields that they've been playing? I would say no. Probably not. The biggest difference there is a guy who's the scapegoat for London Drake and Kyle Pitts, Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith has been really good, and especially good at putting Justin Fields into positions not to make mistakes and to really elevate his game. You know who could use Arthur Smith is the Colts, because Anthony Richardson has not looked like it. If you guys watched the preseason at all, you actually saw Anthony Richardson have one really good drive, and then that was it. Other than that, he looked terrible. It was kind of, I tweeted this out during the primetime game with Trevor Lawrence. You take out that second half against the Chargers in the playoffs, the whole narrative on Trevor Lawrence changes. I feel like that's the exact same thing with Anthony Richardson, where if you take out that one drive and really one throw in the preseason, there's a different narrative on him. And yes, he had a good week 1, but I think people would have been a little bit more cautious with their bold takes from him. And maybe the confirmation bias in week 1 would have not been as significant then. Now we look at the PrizePicks props that we are getting here. Again, a very, very tight game board, I would say. Really not much there. Josh Downs is back. And I'm curious as to how many snaps he played last week. And really just part of the question is just how much is he going to play in this game as well. Alec Pierce has looked good. They like the rookie receiver Mitchell. And then Michael Pittman Jr. needs to get going as well. This is going to be an ugly game. It should be a ground and pound type game. Yeah, I just don't think there's much there, guys, or much here in this game. We'll take a quick peek here at what Underdog is thinking. George Pickens under fantasy score, potentially 9.5. We can see that's off a little bit as compared to what PrizePicks is seeing, but the projection data seems to like the over here. And then Cordell Patterson for under 6.3 for his fantasy score. I could see that. I could see that happening. Not exactly one I want to go out of my way to target, though, either. Kind of up to you guys there. Big edge, though. Big edge worth pointing out. And again, I think he's going to get the work that Jaylen Warren's going to get. And so I feel like that's more of a stay away there. If it misses, I'm kind of okay with it missing. Worth pointing out, TJ Watt over 4.5 tackles and assists. Really just not a bad bet here. 53% likely to hit. Not bad. All right, so we move into the New York Jets versus the Denver Broncos. The Broncos came to life last week, finally, right? They finally had a good game. Kind of a little bit surprising of a good game. Bo Nix looked good, rushing the football. Felt like that kind of unlocked a little bit more of his game. there. So we'll see if he looks good again. Obviously, gets a tough matchup going against the Jets. A couple of players that couldn't get going last week. Javonte Williams struggled. Really not that much room for him. Same thing with Jaleel McLaughlin as well. Teams are really just asking them, the Denver Broncos, to beat them via the passing game, and that is what happened last week. One interesting thing that happened last week was that Humphrey started in place of Valet. And so if that happens again, we don't know for sure if that is going to happen again, but I do think we'd want to be looking at one of those two. Now, reports somewhat suggested that maybe they're being extremely precautious with Valet there, but I don't know if we're actually going to get confirmation on who's starting in that game or who's the actual starter, but I might default to Humphrey, and maybe we can get some decent lines on him, because whoever starts there, guys, I want to call this out. 5 targets, 4 receptions, 8 targets, 6 receptions. And then we look at Valet in the first game before he got injured, 8 targets, 8 receptions. And so they have gotten some kind of easy receptions there. For what it's worth, Josh Reynolds going to be good to go in this game. Full participant, was a little bit banged up. He's got a decent amount of receptions. And then obviously we had Courtland Sutton really just have kind of a breakout game last week, if you can call 68 receiving yards a breakout game. But for this offense, for sure, 11 targets, 7 receptions. That's more of what we expected out of him this season. And so for the Jets, I do want to point out that Mike Williams should be more of a full go. It'll be interesting to see how many snaps he actually gets. Kind of expecting him to get like 80%, maybe. He should be good to go in this game is the real point I want to make. Obviously, last week, short week for them. Now we got that whole time to, get healthy. So we're looking at him. And then from there, nothing really too much. Tyler Conklin playing about 90% of the snaps. I think that's good to know. Now, game total wise, I have to flip this average around, because this is going to be one of the lower scoring games. 39.5 is the total. Jets are favored to win by almost 8 points, which I would say is correct. Like Broncos, albeit dominated last week, it was not exactly like a dominant performance. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to take anything away from them, but like, look at how the Bills are just kind of dominating people. It wasn't that. And so I probably do agree with that 8-point spread. And so let's take a peek at some of the prop bets that we're getting for this game. Breece Hall for his fantasy score. I don't know if I've ever actually seen this, where the calculation that we use to adjust the underdog scoring with the PrizePicks scoring is 100% the same. Just interesting to note, kind of funny. Interesting. It really is. I don't mind that. The under's not terrible. Braylon Allen's been getting a lot more work. Maybe the Denver defense does continue to look good. I could see rolling with that. That's not terrible. Courtland Sutton for over his fantasy score is certainly another interesting one, I will say. Especially on PrizePicks, obviously not an underdog. We wouldn't use that there. But again, a lot of targets in that game, playing a lot of snaps. You would expect him to be able to get like 5 receptions, 450 yards. That's not too much to ask, right? Oh, I hope not. I don't mind that. I think I'm going to write that one down as one we can go with for PrizePicks. Don't let me down, Sutton. This is recency bias right there. That is why I like it. Will Lutz for over field goals made. I mean, the offense has been moving the football. I could see them getting him 250-yard attempts, just needs to make them. Allen Lazard, worth calling out the big prop line difference that we have there. Do you think that's worthwhile? Tyler Conklin, I also don't mind. I want to find some prop bets for him, because I do think last week we did see him kind of get unlocked a little bit. So actually, I'm kind of looking at this. We might have a little bit of a game stack here, like Tyler Conklin over his fantasy score, maybe Allen Lazard over his fantasy score. Courtland Sutton then over his fantasy score is going to be a good one there as well. And really, if we're doing all those, then yeah, Breece Hall's under fantasy score is one that makes sense there. But yeah, Tyler Conklin just playing so much snaps. I was a little bit surprised at his lack of production through the first 2 weeks, because when you look at when Zach Wilson was the quarterback for the New York Jets, he got Tyler Conklin involved in the passing game a bunch. And in a way, Rodgers kind of runs the same offense, just better. He's a better quarterback, obviously. And so I didn't think that Conklin's production would fall off as much as it did. So I don't mind that. For what it's worth, guys, if we're betting on Courtland Sutton for over his fantasy score, is over 3.5 receptions is certainly one that stands out to me as well. Don't really get that line there, honestly. That's a weird one. One that I think we could potentially bet on some sportsbook would be Mike Williams for over 2.5 receptions. Just again, I think he's going to play a little bit more in this game, but at the same time, kind of lower on my totem pole than some of these other ones. We'll take a peek here at Underdog. Not as much there. Sauce Gardner for under tackles and assists popping up there. That's about it. That's really, I guess McMillan there for over 3.5 tackles and assists as well. We could use those two. Sauce Gardner under, McMillan over. Again, I'm kind of surprised that those haven't got bumped. You just look at all the other lines. PrizePicks and Underdog have both just been, oh, any edge you guys get there that's like over even 53%, we're going to bump that. And so decent there as well. Then for what it's worth, I did just want to take a peek at Mike Williams' receptions lines that we are getting to see if there's anyone that was like, maybe we could toss in there. ESPN Bet has his receptions line set at plus 110 to get over 2.5 receptions. I don't mind that. And again, that'd just be more a bet on him getting probably closer to 75% of the snaps. You look at last week, I kind of thought his snaps would be more limited last week than they were in week 2. It was a short week. In week 2, they kind of mentioned that he got more snaps than they were really wanting to get him. And so at least he should be back up to 65% of the snaps. And if it was actually accounting for that, like let's just say 60 is his floor percent of snaps, I think this would be closer to a 50-50 split. Not the best matchup for what it's worth. All right, so jumping into the Eagles versus the Bucks, I don't know exactly what to expect, especially from the Eagles and their passing game. Okay, literally, like their top 3 receivers are probably going to be out in this game. AJ Brown's going to be out. You got Devonta Smith, who's going to be out. We already know that. Jahan Dotson, who they traded for, has been a disappointment. He's not good. I think we already know that. Brendan Covey is going to be out in this game. And so really, it's going to be Paris Campbell on the outside. We kind of know that now. Like this is kind of a spot where you can attack the Bucks. You can attack them in the ground game as well. I think we're expecting a big Barkley game. I kind of think Dallas Goedert's not going to have a big game because really all the defensive attention is going to be on probably Goddard and then obviously trying to stop the run. And then if Paris Campbell, Johnny Wilson, Jahan Dotson beat you, like fine. Like that's what I would do. So just mostly probably a stay away there for the Eagles. Then worth calling out these hamstring injuries. Bucky Irvin currently citing a hamstring injury. Like that actually could be huge if he's limited, or that's actually something that means he's going to sit out. Like Rachaad White would be someone we're looking at to get a heavy workload. We saw what he did last season with a heavy workload, and he'd be someone that we could look at to get involved in the passing game as well. We take a peek at the game total, 42.5 with the Eagles favored to win. Interesting, right? That's a very interesting line there, given the fact that, would you say Smith and A.J. Brown are their 2 best players? I mean, obviously you got Barkley there. I think you could kind of grade those 3, 1A, 1B, 1C. Jalen Hurts, I would say, slightly worse than those guys. That's not a knock on Hurts at all. By any means. That's surprising to me, guys. That is. I know the Bucs just got dominated by the Broncos, but that's just an interesting line there for me. So I don't know what we should be doing there. And so again, looking at the prop lines that we are getting in this game in general here, Cade Otton over his fantasy score is certainly interesting. That's popping up. I don't think we need to get there, but Jake Elliott, I really think that this could be a strong bet here. Over 1.5 field goals, 53% edge. Again, I don't really expect this to get bumped. And just kind of game script wise, the fact that the Eagles are favored to win, like I still think they're going to be able to move the football. That's what that tells me. But they might just be forced to kick a couple more field goals maybe than they would like. So I don't mind that. We are seeing Chris Godwin for over his fantasy score is another one that's popping up. I don't know. I would say Godwin is due for a bad game. He's kind of been lighting it up. And so I don't know. That's probably one that I just don't feel the need to get in on. Other than that, really not that much here, I would say. We jump into Underdog. Are we getting any edges here at all? Barkley for under his fantasy score. Again, probably not one that I would want to go out of my way to target. Couple of assist or tackle props that are going to be pushes. Don't exactly need to get there. Yeah, that's basically it, guys. Let's jump on into the next game. Well, I wanted to see if we were getting any Paris Campbell prop bets, and we're not. A little bit annoying. I was hoping we'd get some reception lines. We're not. So jumping on into the next game now, we had the Arizona Cardinals versus the Washington Commanders. The biggest piece of news here is Trey McBride being out in this game with a concussion. What can we expect out of that? Well, one, Elijah Higgins is going to start, most likely. Should be involved, I would assume, but really, that should just thrust targets to Greg Dortch and to Michael Wilson as well. Michael Wilson ended up with 9 targets last week. Michael Wilson looks good, guys. That's the thing. Looked good in week 1 with limited work. I thought it looked good in week 2 as well with limited work. And so if we know for sure that he should at least be somewhat of a focal point in this offense, obviously we know Marvin Harrison Jr. going to be a focal point for sure, but there's no reason why Michael Wilson shouldn't be involved as well. So I'm hoping we get some good lines on him. Then on the other side of this as well, Brian Robinson Jr. going to get a lot of work in this game with Austin Eckler out. Sure, they have 3 running backs that are kind of capable of being pass catching down backs. Chris Rodriguez from last year is still there. You got Wiley there, who impressed during the preseason. See if they get called up. And I don't think we're expecting McNichols to do much or be active in this game. So it is Rodriguez. Okay, Rodriguez did get called up. So that makes sense. Probably going to be a little bit of the third down back, but I just think Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be a workhorse. And guys, this is the highest scoring game on the slate. 49 is going to be the game total. Cardinals are 3.5-point favorites. Cardinals have looked good thus far this season. Probably agree with that, but definitely a game in which we are expecting a lot of points to be scored. And so right away, looking at the PrizePicks board that's popping up here, I don't know. I would want to bet the over here for Brian Robinson Jr. I would. I think that's a good bet for him to get a touchdown, but maybe fantasy score. Is there anything that we can go in on him here? Not really. They got the lines up there pretty tight. We'll take a peek here at Brian Robinson Jr. on some of the sportsbooks though, seeing if we're getting any edges there, because 2.5 receptions doesn't seem to be that much for him. Again, I think he's going to be treated like a workhorse. And so for me, I just wanted to look at maybe receiving yards at all. Not much there. So receptions, are we getting any plus bets that we can make for him receptions wise? Not really. They're all like minus 115. Okay, but probably not really worth it, honestly, unfortunately. But I don't mind them. If any of these are standing out to you, by all means, go for it. But for these other PrizePicks props that are popping up, yeah, Michael Wilson, I think I'd be fine betting the over 9.5 for his fantasy score. Again, I think that this is a spot where he just should be in for a little bit more work. I wouldn't say that this is exactly Juwan Jennings last week, where it just felt like Juwan Jennings was going to have a big game, kind of take over for the Deebo Samuel role, which did end up happening. I do think that Michael Wilson will take over for some of the production that Trey McBride had been getting. At the same time, I could see it being Greg Dortch as well. In a game where it's going to be high scoring, in a game where we want to be stacking, I could see running out this as a stack. So Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson Jr. as like a low-key stack that we can run out together. I don't even know if we have to go Kyler Murray as well, but that's a bet that's kind of standing out. A little bit of a prop line difference between Underdog and PrizePicks. Not much, but that could be the difference there. Vegas is slightly favoring the over at around 20.5 as well. So if you're running a stack out there, you can. But if you pair this with that, the payout's just going to be reduced a decent amount. So you don't exactly have to do that. And then again, just taking a peek at the Underdog board, really tighter board there on Underdog. So not much there. So we jump on into the next game. We have the Niners versus the Pats. CMC is going to be out for the Niners still. Looking at San Francisco, Deebo Samuel is currently questionable. If he plays, then Juwan Jennings, we don't like him as much because, again, I think a lot of the reason why he is productive is because of Deebo Samuel being out. And then George Kittle is going to be good to go as well. So we're going to see that Juwan Jennings under fantasy score is one of the bets that is standing out. And I would probably agree with that, given the fact that those two players are going to be back healthy and active. And if we look at it, the Patriots have kind of struggled against opposing receivers, so there might be something there as well. For the Patriots, they are good to go receiver-wise, and actually Kendrick Bourne is someone that is kind of working his way back, so interesting there. Then when we look at the game lines for this game, we are going to see that the Patriots are almost 10-point dogs in this game, which, I don't know, almost seems wrong, but you look at the Niners, if they're going to be healthy, Deebo back, George Kittle back, it does make sense as well. Niners, really, Brock Purdy looked good last week as well. Definitely interesting there, though, I would say. I do want to take a peek at the snaps here for the Patriots receivers specifically, because last week, Demario Douglas got a lot of work, 83% of the snaps last week. That is definitely noteworthy to me. That is something that I kind of would have expected more of at the start of the season. They took a little bit of snaps away from Jalen Polk, a lot of snaps away from Tyquan Thornton. Just please keep that up. Like Tyquan Thornton, he's not the deep ball threat you want him to be. I'm sorry. We know that by now. And then, yeah, if Demario Douglas is going to be playing that much, like him getting a lot of receptions is something that I do expect to continue. And so we look at some of these reception lines that we are getting for Demario Douglas. It's not going to be a good bet on PrizePicks or Underdog. We kind of know that. But in some situations, I would say these are crazy too low for him. In a game script that should fit softer coverage, 10-point dogs, right? In a game where he could and should probably get at least 60% of the snaps as well, should get a lot of targets. These are all too low. I don't mind it on Fliff. I already made this bet on Sleeper with one of their discounts because I felt like that was too good of a bet to pass up on. I feel pretty good about this line. Minus 130 or plus 130, BetMGM, ESPN Bet, Hard Rock Bet, and even at Fliff. plus 125. I'm okay with all those. And so this is a bet that I will be running out as well. Again, I already ran it out on Sleeper. And then, yes, I mentioned that Juwan Jennings would be one that is kind of popping up for unders, and we're going to see that. It's because Kittle's back. It's because Deebo Samuel's back. His line is a little bit too high now on both sites. Off by 2. Probably going to get bumped, I would imagine, but still not bad. Joey Sly under his kicking points is certainly an interesting one as well, 5.5. So he's not going to make 2 field goals is basically what they're telling us there. Interesting line there. Hunter Henry for over his fantasy score is a decent prop bet on PrizePicks. You know, I wish he was playing more snaps, only 63% of the snaps last week. We saw actually Austin Hooper get a bunch of work in that game last week. So I don't know if I exactly need to go in on that one as well, but all like okay bets here on the top end of the board. We go ahead then and look at the underdog board. Going to be more of the same here where we are seeing, Tomorrow Douglas under fantasy scores popping up. I don't love that. I don't want to be betting that. Jabril Pepper, for 1.5 assists. I don't mind that. Jake Moody for over 2.5 extra points made. 3 touchdowns scored. I don't hate that as well. That's kind of a sneaky way to game stack this game where it's not getting bumped currently. And then we got some under tackles and assists as well. I love the fact that these haven't been bumped down just yet. Like decent opportunities there. All right, guys. So 2 more games left before we get to the end of this video. Do want to remind you guys of the promo code that's currently going on the 9 to 5 website. Use the promo code KEEPCASH and you get 20% off your first 9 to 5 membership. You get access to all the tools that I've been showing you guys throughout this video. Tools that I use every single day to make these good and educated bets that I've been going throughout this video. And so what I find crazy about this game right away is the low score, 40 points for a Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes game. That is crazy low. Looking at it, the Chiefs are going to be 7.5 point favorites. That also seems crazy to me. I think, one, could the Chargers win this game? Like, I know Justin Herbert's questionable, but they should be able to cover. Like, if he plays, I'm assuming he's good to go. And if that happens, then I don't know. That line seems to be strange. That's probably the one game line that truly stands out to me. But again, that is really much dependent on Justin Herbert being healthy or not. I do think it's worth calling out for the Chiefs. We did see a decent workload go to Carson Steele, 17 carries in that game, 2 receptions or 2 targets as well, 1 reception. I got about 65% of the snaps as well. I think we're going to expect that to continue. Like, he was basically used as Pacheco for the most part. I mean, not terrible as well, not as good, but if they're going to be winning by that much, he's going to get a lot of work, I think. Now, Kareem Hunt is going to be playing. We'll see how much. You know, that's another variable that we see. And so that's where probably just to stay away from the Chiefs running backs. But if there's like an over bet that's popping up for Steele, I probably will go for it. And there's not. There's really nothing going on here for PrizePicks right now. Unfortunate. And that I don't really have any hot takes for this game, guys. The board, it kind of is what the board is. Then looking at underdog, going to be more of the same there. Really not much there at all. Projection data likes Carson Steele a lot more than Vegas and PrizePicks and underdog for receiving yards. We'll see. I don't feel like we have to make that bet, but just interesting to note. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump on into the last game here, which is going to be the Raiders versus the Browns. There's some speculation that Adams might not actually be injured. I don't know. I feel like he would play through an injury, but you know, speculation that he might want to be traded. But with him sitting out, Jacoby Myers instantly becomes the top receiver there. And I in a weird way, I kind of think we can expect some of the production, a lot of the production that Adams has been getting throughout his career with the Raiders, kind of just go to Jacoby Myers. Like, he's a great receiver, but at the same time, let's not sleep on Trey Tucker, guys. Trey Tucker, they like him there. They made that clear. I made the point, I think it was during the first look build for NFL DFS this week. I made the point of saying, if you like Rashid Shaheed, then you love Trey Tucker as well. I mentioned, like, in season-long leagues, if you missed out on Shaheed and you're sad about it, pick up Trey Tucker. He's the exact same player. It's going to be very hit or miss, but now he's going to be thrust into a bigger role. I kind of think Trey Tucker should be in for a big game in this game. Do you think it's worth pointing out as well? Njoku's still out, but also Mayer is out. So we're probably going to see a little bit more snaps go to Brock Bowers. I think that's important to note there. Running backs, I mean, not much here, really. And quarterback-wise, not much here as well. Now, we look at the game total here, and I will say this does seem to be, like, too low. Like, Deshaun Watson has not looked nearly as bad as what people would want you to believe. Guys, there's been terrible quarterback play in this league, and I'm not saying Deshaun Watson's looked good, but he's looked serviceable is the best way to describe it. Obviously, having Devontae Adams out's not good, but this kind of feels like a course correction game for both teams, where it could be a get right spot for both of them. Maybe just one of them goes off and really wins this game by a lot. I would expect that to be the Browns, but you never know. Amari Cooper was someone that had a get right game last week. No, it just feels like that's just such a low game total line there. And so just looking at some of the snaps here in this game, again, Brock Bowers could end up getting about 75% of the snaps. I do think Bryant's going to get a decent amount of those, but you know, he could get a lot of work, and especially with Adams out, they might actually just have to go to more 2 tight end sets. You look at Devontae Adams being out again. I just think that's going to straight go to Trey Tucker. I think those are going to go to Trey Tucker. So I think that's pretty huge there, guys. Like Trey Tucker, we're probably looking at here in some regard. And then running back wise, they're going to have to attempt to give Zamir White a big workload. Worth pointing out, Amir Abdullah currently questionable. If he sits, we might actually just see a lot of Madison, but they're going to try to get Zamir White going in this game, I would imagine, with Adams out. And so real quickly here, guys, I don't mind an over bet on Trey Tucker for over his receptions of 3.5 on DraftKings. You can get at -110 or on FanDuel -108. I don't mind that. I think those are going to be decent bets for us. Again, I just think he's going to be forced into a bigger role. And then we look at Jacoby Myers as well. 4.5 receptions seems vastly too low to me for him in a game where he should be a focal point. They're going to get him the ball and manufactured touches. Like, again, if we were looking at Devontae Adams at 4.5 receptions, wouldn't we just be eating that up? Again, I know he's not Devontae Adams, but he can replace some of the production. I don't mind this. I think those are both good bets there. And guys, obviously with these bets that I'm recommending, where the under is the favorite to hit, I'm just trying to find outliers for us there. They're not going to hit. If they hit, let's put it this way, if they hit 54% of the time, which is our typical goal when looking at PrizePicks and Underdog bets, right? Like that would be massive. That'd be huge. We would love that. But really, we're just trying to find outliers and kind of create a long-term profit by targeting bets where the under is favorited or the opposite of that, where we're betting the opposite of what is favored, I should say, where we can get a better payout. That's really what I'm focusing on here. And so we go ahead and look at the top PrizePicks prop bets. Again, I don't want to touch this Jacoby Myers one. I would argue that they're not really factoring in a touchdown much into that, which they don't have to. But if you just look at the lines that we're getting on him, that seems to be too low. Man, they might be forced to give Zamir White some work in the passing game, which would be ugly, don't get me wrong, if Amir Abdullah is out. But that's an interesting line there, I would say, as well. Daniel Carlson to go over 1.5. Field goals made, I don't mind that. But really the best bet, I would say, is this bet right here, Deshaun Watson. And obviously Deshaun Watson more so here on Underdog, where we can get him at over 14.15 fantasy score. I think that's going to be a good bet for us there as well. Again, with Trey Tucker, I'm not betting the under. Same thing with Jacoby Myers on PrizePicks, not betting the under there. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and get into the bets of the day. Do I just want to remind you guys, if you guys are looking at some of these bets and they kind of stand out to you, you like them, make sure to use the promo codes. If you guys have never signed up, maybe you're someone that only plays on PrizePicks and you want to bet on an Underdog, make sure you use the promo code 9to5. Give you 100% match on a deposit up to $100. Then with PrizePicks, make sure to use the promo code the number 9 and then spell out TO and then 5. They'll give you guys a $50 deposit match when you spend your first $5. And so, guys, looking at a PrizePicks bet of the day, Courtland Sutton over 9 for his fantasy score. Jake Elliott over 1.5 field goals made. Do like the idea of Stack and Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch for over their fantasy score in a game that should be very high scoring. That's really what the bet is there. And obviously a little bit of the production from Trey McBride goes to them. Keenan Allen over 8.5 for a fantasy score. And then the bottom one is going to be Tyler Conklin for over 6 for a fantasy score there as well. And then looking at the Underdog bet of the day, Drake London for under his fantasy score. We saw that was a pretty big outlier compared to how PrizePicks was seeing it and how Vegas was seeing it. Same thing with Leggett. And then Deshaun Watson for over his fantasy score. Feel pretty good about those ones as well. Now, guys, obviously throughout this video, I mentioned a bunch of bets, a lot of traditional bets as well. Lots of stuff to cover. If you guys like any of those bets, by all means, you can use those as well. If you guys enjoyed this coverage, you know what to do. Give it a like and subscribe. If you're watching the video still, I would imagine that you liked it. So make sure to do that. Again, if you guys want access to any of the tools that you saw in this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to all the prop tools that you saw in this video. All right, thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.